Hey, in just a second, we're going to talk about when you lose confidence and what that feels like so you might be able to work forward. But first, let me do a quick pitch. Are you feeling boxed in, frustrated? Do you feel paralyzed? Do things look hopeless? Join us in the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Boy, that sounds depressing as I read that today. Join us in the Ring of Renegades Facebook group where leaders are helping you find another way and inspiring you to achieve it. Yes, we've got a gang of people there that are really focused on overcoming those feelings. So that's the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. If you haven't joined, please do that. So let me get to the business at hand, Tom. We are talking today about what it feels like when confidence is missing. And we're doing that today because often I think people can't put their finger on it. Something's off track. They don't know what it is. And by identifying it, I think it allows them to understand what the issue might be and how they can move forward. And you've been gracious enough, because we drew straws, to talk about a situation where you were lacking confidence and what that did. And hopefully you'll tell us the good result. I didn't ask you that part, but hopefully there's a good outcome, or, we're going to further depress people.
No, we're not going to do that.
Good.
Yeah, no, I think we all go through those stages, and everyone deals with different levels of lack of confidence, or when you lose your confidence. And, I clearly remember probably the time when I had the absolute least confidence in myself was after we had new leadership come in a position that I had been in. And even though, and the organization, I would say, was struggling a little bit, although over the last few years, we had made some significant strides to a challenging opportunity. 2 weeks into this new person on board, I was called into his office as one of the second in command and basically told my position was being eliminated, which for me at that time was a shock. I thought that the meeting was, hey, let's learn a little bit more about each other. Let's, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Because that was sort of an email that had been sent around. And so I literally walked out of that meeting and did not know what to do, which was a interesting position. Not that I had always had a ton of success, but I had progressed along with my career just fine. Things were moving. I got this opportunity. It was the highest level position I had within an athletic organization at the time. And we had just moved to Baltimore. Actually, my family had been down there for a year. And so it was a time where I was starting to so I was like, I don't know what's going on. And more importantly, I didn't know what to do. And I think that might have been the biggest thing, is that I had always felt like I had found my way through, and I had enough confidence in who I was and what I did and how I did it that it was going to be fine. That was probably the point where my confidence was shaken the most.
So can I ask you a couple questions? I appreciate you sharing this with us, because it helps us understand it better. What was different about your day a couple of days after this news and seemingly the end of that job? How did you approach your morning differently? What was your feeling as you got dressed? First of all, I guess you didn't really have a purpose for your day, right?
Well, it was interesting. I did for a while. For a while I felt like, okay, this is good. I was shocked, surprised, whatever, and then the questioning starts to happen after a few, after the initial shock gets over, you go back and you play through your head. What went wrong? What didn't I do right? What signs did I miss? Why was this happening to me? What was I going to do? Now my family's here. What do we, so those questions started going through my head. And fortunately that weekend we actually had to go somewhere. One of my nieces had something going on, so we were going to Philly. So that took my mind off it a little bit. And then as the following Monday came, and Tuesday and Wednesday, and you didn't get up, part of me was initially there was some relief. I got to take my kids to school. I got to be there when they were home. It was much easier to get things around. And initially I thought, okay, this is going to be all right. There's things out there. I'll figure it out. Well, it took 2.5 years for me to land my next role. And in that time, probably for about a year, I was like, not a year, but I was like, what was I doing? And again, I would constantly go back to who was to blame, anger, frustration, disappointment, all of those things. And I think when for all of your life you have gotten up and gone to work, the idea of not doing that was at sometimes overwhelming. And I think what happened was you also start to feel like fear and a shame. Like, I don't really want to tell anybody. What are they going to think of me? Now what's going to happen? All of those things were running through my head, and it made me retreat. And, so for a while I was just trying to figure it out. Then you apply for a bunch of jobs, don't get them. And it just starts to snowball. And you eventually get to this place where you're just not in a good spot.
So that all makes perfect sense. That's consistent with the experiences I've had in those situations. And I'm going to guess some people who have been furloughed, laid off, or have uncertainty about whether their company is going to return, who are listening to this go, oh boy, this is exactly what I'm going through right now. What do you think is the solution? Because presumably you're better off today.
Much better off today. What's interesting is that you don't realize it at the time, but I have come to believe that things happen for a reason, and that I clearly could not see that for a while. What I did, though, was I started to do some things differently. I'm like, well, you know what? I've always wanted to get an MBA, so I got my MBA online. I had time, so I could go, and I knew I was out of shape and overweight, and all of those things were not good for my health. So I had some time, so I started working out. And I think from my MBA and from working out, I started to gain more confidence in who I was and what I was doing. I started getting out and networking and doing all the different things that would eventually, provide me with, it built my confidence back up. So gaining some knowledge, having some little successes, really looking at things a little bit differently was a big, important piece.
And probably because I got to know you in that process, I think being around the right people, right?
Made a huge difference.
And at times you and I were around some of the wrong people.
Yeah, I mean, we always run into that. There are just people who are willing to bring us down or who aren't lifting us up. Let's put it that way.
Right.
They are doing their own thing, which is completely fine, but it's not helping us move forward. And what I think eventually I was able to get another role. And the fascinating thing about it all was after 5 great years in that role with very positive performance reviews, I got called into a meeting and we were like, yeah, we're just going in a different direction. And I was actually feeling that way. I'm like, I'm not on the same page. We need to do. And what was fascinating was how I walked out of that meeting. Because I had gone through that 6 or 7 years before, or 8 years before, my confidence walking out of that meeting was completely different. I had a better understanding of what were the next steps, that I could, if I could survive and my family could survive that 2 years, I could look at what's the next opportunity and look it as an opportunity. And I think that was a key piece, is that I changed my perspective about what had just happened. Not that there wasn't some underlying questions. There were, and I really had a better understanding of where I was and what the opportunities presented.
Well, and working with a lot of people, because over the course of anyone who's out in the world and gets to know people, this happens to people from time to time. I've coached people on these things, gotten paid to do it. I've done it informally. What you're describing is very consistent. What's really interesting to me is almost every time they come out of it better.
Well, because we're better prepared. I think that's the thing, is I had experience of disappointment like that. And I had an understanding of what it was going to take for me to be where I wanted to be. And even when I called my wife and said, yeah, we're going in a different direction. Here's what's going on, blah, blah, blah. She was like, it'll be all right. We'll figure it out. And I think that awareness and knowledge and experience, and if you've never been through it, you have no idea what it's going to feel like. If you've never been through it, you have no idea what somebody else who's going through it is feeling like. especially if, they've been in the work world for a while and this is what they know. Now their sense of purpose has changed and they're just in a very different spot. And so if you can provide them with some knowledge and understanding, that makes a big difference.
And these feelings could be whether you were departed a job under unfortunate circumstances, whether you were fired, whether you chose to leave a job, you started a business and it wasn't doing as well as you thought, you had a partnership with someone in business and it fell apart and you moved on. I've heard it happen in all those situations, haven't you?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And I think that, when it happens, people think they're the only one it's ever happened to.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like they're alone and like nobody knows what I'm dealing with. The more people you talk to about it, the more people they know, their spouses had it happen. It's becoming much more of a common thing, sadly. And so I think people have a better understanding, and yet we never talk about it.
Right.
Because
we assign shame to it. Yeah. There's a stigma,
right,
like getting divorced.
Right.
Whereas it might be, hey, you know what? That was the best thing. It wasn't working. Unhappy people. Let's move and be happy. So,
right.
Tom, what's that one thing, today's antidote for today, that you can share with people that's going to give them a new perspective, change their life based on what we've been talking about with this whole idea of what happens when confidence is missing?
Yeah, I would say that the one thing is that, it's about changing your perspective and how you look at things. That it's likely not the end of the world. There's other things that can happen. And if you go back and find success in other things, now your perspective changes and you're like, oh yeah, your confidence builds up. You can start to move forward. And I think it's almost like once you stop, feeling sorry for yourself and you can start to look at how can I learn from this experience and move forward, that change in perspective makes a big difference.
Cool. Well, that's great, Tom. And I want to congratulate you and thank you for being so open today. I challenged you yesterday and you rose to the challenge, and I appreciate that. It's great. It's great to understand that experience that you had and for you to share it so others can understand and also start to see the path out of that. So with that, we should probably close the book today. And Tom, I never asked you, and we should have done this, but I'm going to do it now. I have a conflict at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Do you want to do this early tomorrow or skip it? It is a holiday.
We're not skipping it.
7 a.m. tomorrow then?
Perfect.
7 a.m. it is. All right, there you go. A meeting. This is how we roll as renegades. So folks, we will see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Until then, have a great day.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.
Tom gave you that antidote, that one thing. But if you want the 3 actionable tips that are going to move you forward, you need to join us in the Renegade Wayfinders. That's where you're going to find leaders taking powerful action to overcome the obstacles standing in their way of their success. That's the Renegade Wayfinders. You can find out more at renegadewayfinders.com. We'll see you there.